I survived a car crash when I was 3. It was a miracle. But the psychic my parents hired claimed I carried a dark curse. If she touches anything brand new, it will claim her life, the psychic warned. My parents believed every single word. From that day on, I only wore Hailey's old clothes. I used her hand-me-down phones, and I even ate her leftover food. Even on Christmas Eve, I never dared to ask for a new present. For 20 years, I lived my life walking on eggshells. Until Hailey got a boyfriend. Not long after they started dating, he was diagnosed with a terminal illness. That very night, my parents pushed her leftover man onto me. Hailey doesn't want him anymore, so he's yours now. A second-hand man is perfect for a cursed girl like you. It'll keep you alive longer. So, wearing Hailey's old, yellowing prom dress, I went with Ethan to City Hall to register our marriage. While we were waiting in line, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was an audio file from an unknown number. I tapped play. The next second, my mother's familiar voice echoed through my headphones. There is no curse. It was all a lie. Chloe is our biological daughter. It doesn't matter if she suffers a little. But Hailey grew up in an orphanage. She's sensitive. If we don't show her absolute favoritism, she might lose her way. I gripped my phone, my blood running ice cold. The so-called curse was never meant to protect me. It was a lie they crafted to ruin my life. All to keep their adopted daughter happy. I stood outside City Hall, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. The audio finished playing. There was nothing but dead silence in my earbuds. All around me, happy newlyweds were laughing and kissing. My mother's voice kept playing on a loop in my head, overlapping painfully with reality. Chloe, what are you doing standing there? You're up next. I looked up. My mother, Sarah, was standing by the entrance, waving at me impatiently. Next to her stood Ethan, wearing a beanie to cover his thinning hair. He used to be Hailey's boyfriend. But the moment he got sick, he became mine overnight. I didn't even have a chance to argue. My parents were so used to giving me Hailey's leftovers, and that included her men. I'm not doing this, I said, pulling the earbuds out of my phone. I spoke clearly, emphasizing every word. I am not getting married. I turned around and walked away, the hem of my cheap dress dragging in the dirt. My mother bought this dress for Hailey's college theater performance years ago. Back then, I couldn't understand why Hailey got a custom-made dress just for a school play. Just like now, I couldn't understand why my parents had lied to me my entire life. Ethan called my name from behind, followed by my mother's furious shrieks. I blocked it all out. Only those taped words echoed in my ears. There is no curse. It was all a lie. We adopted Hailey. She's sensitive. We have to make her feel secure. As for Chloe, she'll understand when she's older. I walked down the street in that ragged wedding dress, tears streaming down my face. Passers-by looked at me like I was a crazy woman and steered clear. Honestly, maybe I was crazy. How could I have believed such a ridiculous lie for 20 whole years? I walked for a long time. I walked all the way from City Hall to the bridge on the south side of town. I tripped and fell, ripping a huge hole in the skirt. If Hailey saw this, she would definitely play the victim. Mom, does Chloe hate my old clothes that much? Look how she ruined it. And whenever Sarah heard Hailey complain, she would cry to me. She'd say she felt so guilty, that she was sorry she gave birth to me just to make me suffer. I never knew what to say. I would just pick up Hailey's discarded clothes and put them on, or force her half-eaten food down my throat. The wind blew, and I realized my knee was scraped. Blood was trickling down my leg. I stopped at the middle of the bridge, gripping the cold metal railing, and looked down at the rushing river below. The water was murky and deep. For a second, I wanted to jump. For over 20 years, I had lived a lie. The hand-me-downs, the leftovers, and now, Hailey's dying boyfriend. Every single part of my life had been carefully calculated by my own parents. You carry a curse. You can't touch new things. Why do you need a birthday party? You're cursed. Your luck is terrible. Don't drag the rest of us down. It was all a lie. My biological parents had locked me in chains, making me believe it was God's will. But God didn't owe me anything. They did. My parents did. I crouched down by the railing and sobbed. A few strangers stopped to ask if I was okay, but I couldn't answer. Eventually, the police arrived with my parents and Hailey trailing right behind them. The first thing my mother did was apologize to the onlookers. I'm so sorry, everyone. My daughter has always been a troublemaker. We don't know what to do with her anymore. Thank you for your help. I promise we'll discipline her when we get home. My father, David, grabbed my arm with a grip like iron, putting on a show of deep worry. Chloe, please just be good and come home with us. Hailey was crying too, her eyes red and teary. In her spotless white sundress, she looked like a fragile angel. Chloe, even if you hate me, you shouldn't run away. Mom and Dad were so worried. If you hate me that much, I'll leave. Just promise you'll take care of them for me. With just a few words, Hailey painted me as a lunatic. Looking at them, I felt a sudden urge to laugh. Growing up, the phrase I heard the most was, Your luck is bad, so you have to listen to us. And I believed them. I had never worn a new piece of clothing or eaten a fresh meal. Even when I got my first period, I had to let Hailey open the pack of pads first, making them used before I was allowed to touch them. How did my life become such a joke? I'm not going back. What did you say? David hissed. In front of everyone. My hands shook as I pressed play on the audio recording. I was done running. Dad, Mom, I know the truth. I know you've been lying to me. I am not going back. My father's face darkened instantly. His nails dug into my skin. What truth? That's just someone trying to trick you. You're my daughter. Why would I hurt you? Before I could say another word, he dragged me toward the car. You've lost your mind. You'd rather believe some stranger's fake audio over your own parents. We raised you, and this is how you repay us? You ungrateful brat. I struggled, but my father slapped me across the face. The metallic taste of blood filled my mouth. You are my daughter. If I tell you to marry him, you marry him. They locked me in the storage room at the back of the house. The door was locked from the outside, and the window was nailed shut. The tiny room had only a twin cot and a cardboard box serving as a nightstand. The walls were covered in yellowed newspapers, decorated with the pencil drawings I'd made when I was a kid. 4 stick figures. Daddy, Mommy, sister, and me. I had lived in this room for 20 years. My mother's voice drifted through the door. The engagement party is tonight. Just cooperate, and everyone will have an easy time. Chloe, be good. Stop throwing tantrums. I said nothing. She slid a bowl of food through a small slot in the door. It was Hailey's lunch leftovers, some wilted lettuce and a half-eaten pork chop over rice. Even now you're still feeding me Hailey's garbage? My entire body was trembling. Even now, they were stubbornly clinging to their lie. I suddenly remembered my 7th birthday. It was also Hailey's birthday. She wore a sparkling party hat and blew out the candles on a massive 3-tier cake. Everyone sang to her. My mother saw the longing in my eyes and patted my head. When it's your turn, I'll buy you a big cake too. But a month later, on my actual birthday, my mother simply handed me a bowl of cold, soggy noodles Hailey had left over from lunch. Hailey said she didn't want cake today, she wanted noodles. My mother said, just eat this. And wash the dishes when you're done. I took the bowl and forced myself to smile, pretending it was the best thing I'd ever tasted. Because I knew that made my parents happy. And I would do anything to make them happy. That night, I couldn't sleep. The cot only had a thin blanket, another one of Hailey's old things. Her name was beautifully embroidered on the corner in gold thread. My mother had spent hours on it. I remembered last winter, when Hailey complained that her puffer jacket was getting old. Without a second thought, my mother Venmo'd her $500 for a new one. That same day, I came home from school with blue, shivering lips. My eyes locked onto Hailey's old jacket. My mother glared at me. Why do you always want Hailey's things? Do we not feed and clothe you? Stop being so greedy. The night grew colder. Through the thin door, I could hear my parents whispering in the hallway. What did the Shelby family say? They're rushing us. Ethan's condition is getting worse. His parents are desperate. They said the moment the marriage license is signed, they'll wire the $50,000. Good. Hailey wants to go to Europe for her graduation trip. That money will cover it perfectly. I clamped my hand over my mouth to stifle my sobs. So they were selling me to a dying man just to fund Hailey's trip to Europe. My mother was silent for a moment before asking, how did she find out about the curse? Who sent her that recording? My father let out a cold snort. It's just an audio clip. Who can prove it's our voices? Just tell everyone it was AI generated. Who are our relatives going to believe? Us or her? My mother hummed in agreement, sounding relieved. Besides, my father muttered, his voice dropping, we trained Chloe well. She does whatever we tell her to do. She's just throwing a tantrum. Lock her up for 2 days, and she'll fall back in line. I clenched my fists in the dark. They were right. I was extremely well trained. I never asked for new things, I never talked back, and I never cried. I was like a dog that had been chained up for 20 years. Every time they pulled the leash, I fell in line. But not this time. This time, I was going to break the chain. The next morning, my mother brought me food. It was Hailey's leftover takeout from the night before, a few cold French fries and some half-eaten chicken wings. Seeing that I hadn't touched it, she frowned. Don't eat then. You're getting married today anyway. Once you're out of this house, you're not our problem anymore. My mother threw a dress at me, another one of Hailey's old outfits. There was a faded stain near the collar. I didn't move. She sneered. What? Still throwing a fit? All our relatives and friends are going to be there today. Don't you dare embarrass us. I looked up at my mother. She was wearing a brand new, elegant burgundy dress with delicate lace details. Her hair was perfectly styled. She looked more like the bride than I did. I didn't argue. I silently put on the stained dress. As I zipped it up, I remembered when I was 15. It was parent-teacher conference night. I had scored third in the entire district, and I desperately wanted my mother to go. But she had told me, Hailey has a piano recital that night. I can't make it. You can go by yourself, you know the way. That night, I was the only student whose parents didn't show up. Later, I found out Hailey's recital wasn't even that week. My mother had gotten the dates mixed up. Or maybe, she just didn't care enough to check. I wanted to ask her. In 20 years, you never showed up for me once. Why are you so eager to show up today? They brought me to the hotel. The banquet hall was packed with 10 tables of family and friends, all chatting and laughing. I was locked in a private dressing room. After a while, my mother came in to check on me. Seeing my bare face, her expression soured. You're going out like that? I smiled coldly. I thought I was cursed, Mom. What's the point of makeup? A flash of anger and hurt crossed her face. She grabbed a lipstick from her purse, pinched my chin hard, and smeared it across my lips. When we go out there, you smile. Do you hear me? I kept my mouth shut. Frustrated, she called my father in. David stormed in, clutching a heavy leather belt in his hand. He had used that belt on me countless times when I was a kid. The worst time was when Hailey lied and said I stole her chocolate. He had whipped me until my back bled. Afterward, my mother applied ointment to my cuts, crying and saying, Don't hate your father. He only does this because he loves you. Now he loomed over me, gripping the belt. Keep your mouth shut out there. Understood. I let out a soft laugh. Mom, Dad, am I really your biological daughter? My voice was dead calm. And Hailey was adopted from the orphanage, right? You didn't get us mixed up? My mother froze for a few seconds before snapping. You've gone completely crazy because of that fake recording. I told you it's fake. Someone is trying to ruin our family. Do you really think I can't recognize my own mother's voice? So what if it is? My father barked. We raised you. We gave you life. If we tell you to marry, you marry. Stop being so damn ungrateful. So you tortured me for 20 years just to please an outsider? Hailey is not an outsider, my mother screamed. I raised Hailey. She is closer to me than you ever were. Do you know how much she suffered in that orphanage? If I treated you better, she would feel left out. What if she went down a dark path because of that? So you chose to destroy me instead? Destroy you? How? Did we starve you? Are you dead? Are you paralyzed? How is that torture? My mother spoke with absolute conviction, completely righteous. You're just being dramatic. Let me tell you, Chloe, this is your destiny. You just have to accept it. The moment she finished speaking, muffled gasps and whispers erupted from the hallway outside. Suddenly, a relative burst through the door, holding her phone. Sarah. Oh my God, you guys are on live stream. Everyone is watching. A slow smile spread across my face. I pulled my phone out of my pocket, showing them the TikTok app. Dad, Mom, thank you for finally telling the truth. We are live. Now the whole world knows exactly how little my life means to you. The screen of my cracked phone blinked with a dizzying cascade of red notification badges, likes, and comments scrolling so fast the text blurred into a river of digital fury. The viewer count in the top right corner read 142,800. Inside the private dressing room, the air went completely dead. David's face had drained of every drop of color, turning the exact shade of lard. His grip on the heavy leather belt went slack, the brass buckle clattering against the parquet floor with a sharp, hollow crack. Sarah stood frozen, her mouth still parted from her righteous monologue about destiny and ungrateful brats. Her eyes darted from my face to the glowing camera lens, then to Aunt Brenda standing in the open doorway, clutching her smartphone with trembling hands. Outside in the banquet hall, the lively chatter of 80 wedding guests had collapsed into an eerie, suffocating silence. Then came the audio delay. Through the thin drywall, Sarah's own screeching voice echoed from dozens of smartphones simultaneously, slightly out of sync, reverberating across the hotel lobby like a chorus of demons. Did we starve you? Are you dead? Are you paralyzed? How is that torture? Let me tell you, Chloe, this is your destiny. You just have to accept it. Turn it off, David whispered, his voice cracking. I didn't move. I held the phone steady, the front-facing camera pointed directly at his gray, trembling face. I said, turn it the hell off. David roared, lunging forward with his arm outstretched, his fingers hooked like claws aiming straight for my throat. I didn't flinch. I had spent 20 years bracing for his blows, curling into a ball on the floor of that dark storage room, waiting for the leather belt to stop whistling through the air. But today, the invisible chains had snapped. Before his fingers could graze my skin, a tall, broad-shouldered man pushed past. Aunt Brenda in the doorway caught David's wrist in midair and twisted it downward with brutal efficiency. David let out a sharp cry of agony, his knees buckling until he slammed against the dressing table. Don't touch her, a deep, gravelly voice commanded. I looked up. It wasn't a stranger. It was Julian Shelby, Ethan's older brother, a criminal. defense attorney whom Ethan had claimed was out of the country on business. Beside Julian stood Ethan himself, leaning heavily on a lightweight aluminum cane, his beanie pulled low over his hollowed cheeks. His face was twisted in a mixture of shock, nausea, and deep, burning humiliation. Ethan. Sarah stammered, scrambling backward until her spine hit the vanity mirror. Ethan, sweetheart, listen to me. It's a misunderstanding. Chloe is having an episode. She's mentally unstable. She's hallucinating. A misunderstanding? Ethan rasped, his voice trembling with raw disgust. Raised his phone, where the live stream was still broadcasting her confession to over 150,000 people. You took $50,000 from my parents yesterday afternoon. You told my dying mother that Chloe loved me, that she wanted to care for me in my final months, that she was honored to wear Hailey's old dress. Ethan took a ragged breath, coughing weakly into a handkerchief before glaring at Sarah. My family is dealing with terminal cancer, and you treated my illness like a scrap heap transaction to fund your adopted daughter's European vacation. No, that's not, Sarah wailed, reaching out to grab Ethan's sleeve. Do not touch my brother, Julian warned, stepping between them, his eyes like flint. And do not leave this room. I called the police 10 minutes ago when the stream hit 5,000 viewers. From the main banquet hall, the sound of glass shattering echoed through the corridor. Hailey had dropped her champagne flute. She stood in the center of the hall, wearing a pristine ivory silk cocktail dress, surrounded by our relatives who were staring at her with expressions ranging from horror to outright disgust. Her cousin, who had always bullied me on Hailey's behalf, took 2 hurried steps away from her, as if proximity to Hailey might taint her own reputation. Mom. Hailey shrieked, running toward the dressing room in tears, her heels clicking frantically against the floor. Mom, tell them to stop. People are commenting on my Instagram. My university sorority just kicked me out of the group chat. Someone leaked my campus address. Hailey burst into the dressing room, grabbed Sarah's arm, and shook it hysterically. Fix this. Tell them Chloe is lying. Tell them she made it up. Sarah looked at Hailey, then at the camera still live streaming every second of their breakdown. The comments section was an unyielding avalanche. Call the police. This is domestic abuse, unlawful imprisonment, and human trafficking. Look at the girl's dress. It's stained and ripped while the mother is wearing a designer gown. The adopted sister is whining about her sorority while the real daughter was beaten with a belt. Psychopaths. Lock the whole family up. The wail of police sirens began to echo from the street below, cutting through the hotel's glass entrance. I looked at the 4 of them, David clutching his twisted wrist, Sarah hyperventilating into her hands, Hailey sobbing over her ruined social status, and Ethan looking at me with profound, agonizing remorse. I turned the camera toward myself, looking straight into the lens. Thank you, everyone, I said, my voice steady, clear, and calm for the first time in 20 years. My name is Chloe Brooks, and I am finally pressing charges. I tapped the screen and ended the broadcast. The police did not treat this as a family dispute. When 3 squad cars and an ambulance pulled up to the hotel entrance, the viral livestream had already crossed 2 million views on reposted clips. The local precinct captain had seen the video himself 20 minutes prior. David was handcuffed right there in the dressing room. When the officers searched him, they confiscated the heavy leather belt from the floor and a set of master keys that included the padlock to the storage room back at our house. Sarah tried to play the distraught, fragile mother, screaming that I was an ungrateful child who needed psychiatric evaluation. The female officer who took my statement didn't even look at her. She simply draped a heavy, navy blue wool blanket over my shivering shoulders and gently guided me toward the ambulance. Sweetheart, the paramedic said softly as she swabbed the dried blood from my lip. We need to document these bruises. Can you lift your sleeves for me? I hesitated. For 2 decades, exposing my skin had been forbidden unless it was covered in Hailey's discarded clothes. Touching something clean, something that hadn't been worn, washed, and faded by someone else first, still triggered an involuntary spike of cold dread in the pit of my stomach. You're cursed. If you touch anything new, it will claim your life. The paramedic noticed my hesitation. She paused, her eyes full of gentle understanding. This is a fresh, sterile dressing, she said quietly. It's yours. Nobody has ever used it before. And nothing bad is going to happen to you. Tears, hot and silent, burned my eyes. I slowly pulled back the frayed, oversized sleeves of Hailey's stained dress. Across my forearms and wrists were the purplish-yellow remnants of old bruises, overlapping with the fresh red welts from David's belt. Along my left knee, a deep scrape from my fall on the bridge had crusted over with dirt and dried blood. The officer standing by the ambulance doors took photographs with a digital camera, each mechanical click sounding like a nail driven into my parents' legal coffin. We executed a search warrant on the residence at 442 Elm Street 30 minutes ago, Detective Miller told me as we sat in the quiet consultation room at the precinct later that afternoon. He slid a manila folder across the metal table. Inside were high-resolution photographs of the back storage room, the barred window, the padlock on the exterior doorframe, the moldy mattress on the floor, and the cardboard box I had used as a nightstand. The state attorney is charging David Brooks with felony aggravated assault, domestic battery, and unlawful imprisonment, Detective Miller said, his jaw tight. Sarah Brooks is being charged with child endangerment, criminal neglect, and conspiracy to commit wire fraud regarding the $50,000 transaction with the Shelby family. I stared at the photos. The room that had been my entire universe for 20 years looked so small, so pathetic, beneath the harsh white flash of a police camera. And Hailey? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Hailey isn't facing criminal charges yet, as she was a minor for part of the timeline and there's no direct evidence she physically struck you, Detective Miller admitted. However, the Shelby family's attorney, Julian Shelby, just filed a civil lawsuit against all three of them for $50,000 in restitution, plus damages for emotional distress and fraudulent misrepresentation. The door to the consultation room opened with a soft knock. Julian Shelby stepped inside, carrying a large paper shopping bag from a department store downtown. He set the bag on the table in front of me. Ethan is at the hospital receiving his treatment, Julian said, his voice deep and measured. He asked me to bring you this. I looked into the bag. Inside lay a soft, cream-colored knitted sweater, a pair of dark denim jeans, clean socks, and a pair of simple leather boots. The tags were still attached. The crisp, papery smell of new fabric rose from the bag. My hands hovered over the rim, trembling violently. I can't. I choked out, a phantom panic seizing my throat. It's new. Julian pulled out a chair and sat down across from me. He didn't mock me. He didn't tell me I was being dramatic. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small silver pocket knife, and gently sliced the plastic price tags off the sweater and jeans. Chloe, Julian said, holding the cream sweater out to me with steady hands. Your parents built a prison out of superstition because they were cowards who wanted to steal from you without feeling guilty. The curse died the second you told the truth. Put it on. I looked at the soft wool. I reached out, my fingertips brushing the fabric. It was warm. It smelled of cedar and fresh cotton. No ghost of Hailey's perfume. No faded stains near the collar. No worn-out seams stretched by someone else's body. I pulled the sweater over my head. The world didn't end. Lightning didn't strike the precinct roof. My heart didn't stop beating. There was only the clean, soft warmth of a sweater that belonged to no one in the world but me. I buried my face in the wool and wept until my chest ached, washing 20 years of poison out of my soul. By the third day after the livestream, the internet storm had not died down. It had evolved into a full-scale social reckoning. The hashtag Justice for Chloe had accumulated over 40 million impressions across TikTok and Twitter. News outlets from 3 states were camped outside the county courthouse. Local businesses that had once employed David Brooks terminated his contracts, and the university where Hailey had been studying communications released a formal statement confirming her indefinite suspension, pending an ethics review. I was staying in a quiet, sunlit room at a women's transitional shelter arranged by Julian's legal firm. For the first time in my life, I had a bed with clean, white sheets that had never been slept in by anyone else. I had 3 hot meals a day served on fresh ceramic plates. Every morning, I woke up, looked at the unlocked doorknob, and spent 10 minutes simply touching the brass handle, reminding myself that I was free. At 2 p.m. on Thursday, Julian arrived at the shelter with an older woman in an elegant gray wool coat. The woman had sharp, intelligent gray eyes, her silver hair pulled back into a net bun. She carried a thick, leather-bound briefcase stamped with the insignia of Vance and Sterling Trust Management. Chloe, Julian said, introducing her. This is Eleanor Vance. She is the senior trustee who sent you that audio file 3 days ago. I stood up from the small sofa, my heart thumping against my ribs. You. I looked at the woman. Why did you send it to me? How did you even have a recording of my mother? Eleanor Vance looked at me with an expression of profound, aching sorrow. He sat down at the small table and gestured for me to join her. Because 20 years ago, Chloe, I made a promise to your grandmother, Eleanor said, opening her briefcase. She pulled out a yellowed, certified legal document dated May 14, 2004, the year of my 3rd birthday. Your maternal grandmother, Evelyn Ward, was the sole owner of a commercial real estate empire in the Northern District, Eleanor explained, sliding the documents toward me. Your mother, Sarah, was Evelyn's only daughter. But Evelyn knew Sarah was narcissistic, financially irresponsible, and easily manipulated. Eleanor turned a page, pointing to a highlighted clause in the trust agreement. When you were 3 years old, Evelyn revised her will. She placed her entire estate, valued at $4.2 million at the time, now worth over $12 million, into an irrevocable generation-skipping trust. Sarah and David were completely disinherited. My breath hitched in my throat. $12 million? Yes, Eleanor said softly. The terms of the trust were simple. The capital would remain untouched until you reached your 25th birthday, at which point the entire portfolio would be transferred directly into your name. Sarah and David were granted only a modest monthly guardianship allowance of $3,000 to cover your living expenses until you came of age. Then why? I struggled to find my voice. Why did they adopt Hailey? Why the curse? Eleanor's eyes hardened, a cold fury flashing behind her spectacles. Because there was a contingency clause, Eleanor said. Paragraph 12b, if Chloe Brooks were to suffer from permanent mental incapacitation, severe psychological incompetence, or surrender her legal autonomy through a conservatorship, the management of the trust would revert to Sarah Brooks. The room went dead silent. The pieces of my shattered childhood fell together with the horrifying, mechanical precision of a bear trap. The car crash when I was 3. I whispered, cold sweat prickling my neck. The crash was real. Eleanor nodded grimly. Sarah was driving recklessly. You survived with minor concussions. But Sarah and David saw an opportunity. They hired a crooked psychic to convince the extended family that you were cursed and psychologically fragile. Then they adopted Hailey from an unlicensed private agency in the next county. They wanted a replacement, I said, the bitter truth burning my tongue like bile. They wanted an excuse to break you, Eleanor corrected, her voice trembling with indignation. They knew that if they raised you to be confident, educated, and independent, you would claim your grandmother's fortune the second you turned 25, and they would be left with nothing. So they spent 20 years systematically destroying your self-worth. Eleanor leaned forward, her hand resting over mine on the table. They made you eat scraps so you would never ask for your inheritance. They made you wear rags so you would believe you were worthless. They locked you in that storage room so you would remain docile, broken, and terrified of the world. And when Hailey's spending drained their personal savings, they decided to marry you, off to a dying man with a conservatorship agreement already drafted in his medical files. How did you get the audio recording? I asked. Sarah came to my office last week, Eleanor said, pulling out a small digital recorder. She demanded an advance on your trust fund, claiming you were too mentally unstable to manage your life and that Hailey needed the money for her education. I had the conference room wired. When I refused her request, she lost her temper and bragged to David in the hallway about how they had fooled you for 20 years. Eleanor pushed a set of bank authorization forms and a black titanium fountain pen across the table. Your 25th birthday is in 3 weeks, Chloe. Your grandmother's trust is waiting for you. All you have to do is sign. While I was reviewing the trust portfolio with Eleanor, the reality of the Brooks family's collapse was playing out across the local media. The criminal trial of David and Sarah Brooks was expedited due to the overwhelming public interest and the undeniable video and audio evidence. David's request for bail was denied after the prosecutor presented the leather belt, the padlocked room, and the medical records showing chronic, systematic malnutrition spanning 15 years. He sat in the county detention center, his union job revoked, facing 5 to 8 years in state prison. Sarah, released on an electronic monitoring ankle bracelet while awaiting trial, returned to the empty house on Elm Street. The front yard was ruined. Protesters had spray-painted the words child abusers and monsters across the white vinyl siding in bright red paint. The windows had been boarded up with plywood after local residents threw rotten fruit and stones at the glass. Inside the dark house, Sarah sat on the living room sofa in her burgundy lace dress, shivering under a fleece blanket. The power had been shut off due to unpaid utility bills. The $50,000 from the Shelby family had been frozen by court order, and their bank accounts were under a judicial lien. The front door opened with a frantic creak. Hailey stumbled into the house, dragging a small rolling suitcase behind her. She looked unrecognizable. Her pristine white sundress was crumpled and dirty at the hem. Her blonde hair was tangled, her eyes bloodshot from days of crying. "Mom," Hailey wailed, dropping her bag on the floor. "The landlord at my university apartment just evicted me. He said having me in the building is a safety hazard because journalists are camping in the lobby. I need money for a hotel." Sarah looked up slowly, her face haggard, lined with deep, bitter creases. "There is no money, Hailey," Sarah said, her voice flat and raspy. What do you mean there's no money? Hailey shrieked, stomping her foot on the dusty rug. What about Dad's savings? What about my graduation trip to Italy? The flight leaves next Tuesday. I already bought the luggage. Your father is in jail. Sarah screamed, suddenly lunging off the sofa, her face contorting into a mask of pure, hysterical rage. The lawyers want $30,000 just for the preliminary retainer. The bank froze our cards. The neighbors threw paint at my car. And all you care about is your damn trip to Italy. Hailey recoiled, stunned. In 20 years, Sarah had never raised her voice at her. Sarah had always treated her like a porcelain doll, shielding her from every harsh word, giving her the best cut of meat, the softest blankets, the newest clothes. Mom. Hailey stammered, tears spilling down her cheeks. Why are you yelling at me? I'm your daughter. You're an adopted brat who cost me $12 million. Sarah spat venom, dripping from every syllable. If you hadn't been so greedy, if you hadn't demanded $50,000 for your European holiday, we wouldn't have rushed the marriage with Ethan Shelby. Chloe would have stayed in that room. The trust would have been ours. Hailey stared at her mother, her jaw slack with disbelief. You only adopted me to steal Chloe's money? Of course I did. Sarah laughed, a sharp, unhinged sound that echoed through the dark, cold hallway. Did you really think I loved you more than my own flesh and blood? You were a prop, a tool to make Chloe feel inadequate. And now look at us. We have nothing. Hailey stood frozen in the dark living room. She looked around at the stained wallpaper, the plywood over the windows, the cold kitchen where no fresh food had been cooked in days. On the dining table sat a single, half-empty box of stale takeout noodles, the exact kind of food they had thrown into Chloe's storage room for 20 years. Hailey's stomach growled, hollow and painful. She slowly walked over to the table, her hands shaking, and looked down at the cold, congealed noodles. There was no custom-made cake. There was no gold-embroidered blanket. There was no mother rushing to wipe her tears with a warm cloth. There were only the scraps left behind in a ruined house. 2 weeks before my 25th birthday, I bought my first piece of real estate. It wasn't a sprawling mansion or a luxury penthouse. It was a modest 2-story craftsman house on the eastern edge of the city, overlooking a quiet valley, filled with blooming apple orchards and wild clover. The house had large, bay windows that let in the morning sun, a wraparound porch, painted in clean slate gray, and a small garden in the backyard where yellow roses were beginning to bud. Julian Shelby stood beside me on the porch, holding 2 cardboard cups of hot coffee from the local roastery down the road. The deed was registered this morning, Miss Brooks. Julian smiled, handing me a cup. The title is clear. The property belongs entirely to you. I took the cup, breathing in the rich, bitter aroma of roasted beans. I looked down at the key in my palm, a brand new brass key, gleaming in the autumn sunlight. How is Ethan? I asked quietly. Julian's smile softened into something somber, but peaceful. The new immunotherapy trial at Johns Hopkins accepted his case yesterday. The doctors say the tumor markers have stabilized. He has a real chance, Chloe. He told me to tell you that he's sorry for being weak and that he hopes you live a long, beautiful life. Tell him I hope he gets better, I said, and for the first time the memory of Ethan did not bring an ache to my chest. He had been a pawn in my parents' game, just as I had been, but he had chosen to break his own silence when it mattered. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The wooden floors smelled of fresh pine and natural beeswax. In the living room sat a brand new, deep green velvet armchair I had ordered from an independent furniture maker in Vermont. In the kitchen, a set of white porcelain bowls, completely untouched by anyone else, sat neatly in the oak cabinets. In the master bedroom upstairs, a king-sized bed was covered in crisp, snow-white linen sheets, decorated with 2 pillows that had never known another person's head. I walked over to the bed, sat down on the edge of the mattress, and ran my open palms across the smooth, cool fabric. No gold-embroidered names belonging to another girl. No yellowed stains near the seams. No cold, soggy leftovers waiting on the floor outside my door. I lay back against the pillows, looking up at the clean white ceiling where the afternoon sunlight painted golden squares of warmth across the wall. I closed my eyes and took a long, deep breath of clean air. I was 25 years old. I had survived the car crash. I had survived the fate curse. I had survived the leather belt, the dark storage room, and the 20 years of stolen light. And for the very first time in my life, tomorrow was completely, beautifully, and unconditionally brand new. 6 months later, the state superior court delivered the final judgments. David Brooks was found guilty on 4 counts of felony domestic battery, unlawful imprisonment, and fraudulent concealment of trust assets. The judge sentenced him to 7 years at the state correctional facility, with no eligibility for parole for the first 5. Sarah Brooks was convicted of criminal child neglect, felony conspiracy to commit wire fraud, and grand larceny regarding the unauthorized withdrawal of trust guardianship allowances. She received a sentence of 5 years in prison, along with a mandatory civil restitution order requiring the forfeiture of the Elm Street house to repay the trust fund's legal fees. When the bailiffs led Sarah away in handcuffs, she turned back toward the gallery where I was sitting, her face pale, her lips trembling. "Chloe," Sarah wailed, tears streaming down her hollow cheeks. "I'm your mother. You can't let them take me to prison. Who will take care of Hailey? Chloe, please." I sat in the third row, wearing a tailored navy blue coat, my hands resting comfortably in my lap. I looked at her, not with rage, not with hatred, but with the calm, immovable detachment of someone looking at a stranger through a glass window. "You told me that suffering was my destiny, Sarah," I said softly, my voice carrying clearly through the quiet courtroom. "Now it's yours." Sarah let out a choked shriek as the heavy wooden doors of the holding cell slammed shut behind her. Hailey sat at the far end of the gallery, wearing a faded black coat she had bought at a thrift store. Her hair was unwashed, her face gaunt, her designer jewelry long since pawned to pay for her shared basement apartment near the train tracks. When she caught my eye, she shrank back, pulling her collar up around her neck, terrified that I might look at her with the same contempt she had shown me for 20 years. I didn't speak to her. I stood up, buttoned my coat, picked up my leather briefcase containing the final trust transfer certificates, and walked down the center aisle of the courtroom. I stepped out through the grand stone pillars of the courthouse into the bright, crisp morning air. Julian was waiting at the bottom of the steps, holding 2 tickets to the Botanical Gardens exhibition across town. "Ready, Chloe?" he asked, offering his arm with a warm, easy smile. I looked up at the wide, endless blue sky. The sun was warm against my face, melting the last traces of winter from the earth. "I'm ready," I smiled, taking his arm and walking down into the light.